Just so that we're official, we will call this special meeting of the Affordable Housing Plan Steering Committee to order at 7:03 for the forum.
All right, let me launch the slides here. Is it all right if with you all, if I keep it in this mode? It helps me. If I put it in presentation mode, it goes wild and goes to my other screen. Can everybody see this okay? Yeah, okay. So Jean, I think you're up.
I am. Welcome to this community feedback form. So this is number 2 of our community feedback forms to head us in the direction of a draft and then final plan for our statutory requirement and long overdue plan to explore and come up with strategies for for housing in Kent. And our forum agenda will follow as you see for you. We'll have a quick recap from the last one, and we'll talk about what housing needs is the plan trying to address, goals and strategies, and then probably the most important is getting your feedback. So I'm going to ask the folks who are here for the forum tonight to really, as you're walking through this process with us and all these slides that we're going to present to you, and it's not that many, it's only about 15 or 16 total content slides. Really sort of keep in your mind how is this applying to me? How is this applying to the people I care about in Kent? How is this applying to, and what does it mean to our town? Because we're really looking to have some good feedback at the end of the slide deck. And just a quick overview of our committee. As again, you see the list there. I'm not going to read the list, but we come from lots of different spheres. And I think the crossover of the sphere is like the perfect, beautiful, most favorite color that you can imagine. And it's really been, for me, it's been a great process. And just hearing from all the other spheres that I don't always interact with, it's been a terrific process. And Jocelyn, while she did the entire slide deck and the committee certainly helped edit and fine tune it, on this particular slide where she put consultant providing technical assistance, she does way more than that. And she makes sure we keep on track. She makes sure we have monthly meetings. She makes sure that we're staying true to what we're required to and also what we should be doing. And we have the great benefit of her consulting expertise on how many other towns are you doing plans or have done plans for? 9, 10, lost count.
I'm doing 9 right now. I did 6 last year.
So this is somebody who has a wealth of knowledge, and I feel like we're not the canary in the coal mine. We're benefiting from all those plans that came before us with Jocelyn's, hand on the wheel here. We meet on the 4th Wednesday of each month. They're open to the public, and our meetings, minutes and agendas and recordings are all posted to the town website.
Thanks, Jean.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to do a quick recap. Hopefully, I do want to thank everybody who's here tonight. It is so important for the committee to get feedback from residents in the town, and we so appreciate your time. Again, as Jean mentioned, I'm Jocelyn Ayer. I am actually the director of the Litchfield County Center for Housing Opportunity. So I do work with nonprofit housing organizations throughout Litchfield County. And I am a land use planner as well. So as Jean had mentioned, I've worked with many towns in the region on, again, really thinking about what their housing needs are, putting some, and putting some numbers around that, and then figuring out a strategy for meeting those needs. So, and that's what we're doing here in Kent. What we talked about at the last meeting, community feedback forum that we had, was really what we had discovered so far in terms of what Kent's housing needs are. We did review the results of the resident housing needs survey and some data analysis that we did around housing needs. And we also talked a bit about what Kent's existing housing stock looks like and kind of what the gaps are between what you have now and what we see when we look at, again, the survey results and the data around housing needs in town. So that's kind of what we did at the last forum. What we are doing tonight is talking to you about some of the goals and strategies that the Housing Plan Steering Committee have come up with so far, again, to try to meet the identified housing needs. And as Jean mentioned, the core thing we're going to try to do tonight is get some feedback from you. So that's really going to be what is in the housing plan, which we will be drafting in the next couple months here. And again, getting out to everyone in town for their feedback. We do want to note that this housing plan, in case there's any confusion, as you might know, the Planning and Zoning Commission is also working on a update to the town's plan of conservation and development. And obviously housing is an important piece of conservation and development in town. And so this committee is coordinating its efforts with the Planning and Zoning Commission on, again, making sure that those two plans are coordinated as they're kind of on parallel tracks. But we do hope that this housing plan will be completed prior to the completion of the town plan of conservation and development. And we just wanted to note that this housing plan, it will be a guidance document in a similar way to the town's plan of conservation and development. It won't have regulatory authority. Again, it's just intended to be sort of a map, an explanation of what the housing needs are in the community, and again, goals and strategies around meeting those needs. But anything regulatory that comes out of it would go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, just like anything else. So we just wanted to sort of clarify that. So again, we did talk more at the last forum about what the needs were that we have seen in terms of the data and the survey results. So what the steering committee has focused on is sort of three demographics that we see a lot of need for housing options for, which include young adults and young families, downsizing options. And what we mean by that are kind of 1 or 2 bedrooms, lower maintenance with accessibility features. And then specifically options for people who work in town as well, to support some of the employers in Kent and keep those businesses vibrant.
Jocelyn, I'm just going to make a little public service announcement. Can everybody make sure they're on mute for the time being? There's some background noise and crinkling that is interfering with hearing you. Thanks.
Yes, that would be great. So, and again, in terms of these demographics, one of the pressing housing needs that we've seen as we have studied this issue over the last many months is the need for dedicated affordable housing for those who live or work in Kent, again, especially in these 3 demographic groups. And so I'm going to just talk about what we mean when we talk about dedicated affordable. And again, if you were at the last forum, you heard kind of what we mean when we talk about affordable housing, which is that for a household earning 80% of the area median income or less, that the mortgage or rent not cost any more than 30% of that household's income. So what you see on the slide is the income limits for households of various sizes at both 80% of the area median income and 50% of the area median income. So for example, if you were a household of 3 people and you made $74,000 or less, you would qualify to live in affordable housing, and that housing could not cost more than 30% of your household's income. The one additional item that we add to this definition to call it dedicated affordable is that it be monitored in some way to assure that the households that live there are in fact at 80% of the area median income or less, and that they are not being charged any more than 30% of their income on housing costs. You know, we know that there is housing in Kent and really in all our towns in Litchfield County that are in fact housing people at 80% of the area median income or less. And they may very well only be paying 30% of their income on housing costs, but the housing itself isn't dedicated to remaining affordable over time. And I think, you know, what we've all seen, for example, through this crazy COVID housing market, which we know is slowing down a bit, but we've seen how fast, how quickly prices can go up, and thereby making those units that were affordable to the households previously are now no longer affordable, you know, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, for example, or a renter trying to compete in a very, very tight rental market. So that's sort of the reason for talking about dedicated affordable and not just sort of, you know, units that might be housing folks at these income levels, but, you know, aren't in any way over time assured to stay affordable for those households. And so just to sort of, again, summarize some of what we talked about at the last meeting in terms of what we've seen that really shows the need for this type of dedicated affordable housing. So 460 households in Kent are earning incomes that, again, would qualify them to live in affordable housing. And that's about 40% of Kent's households. And currently you have 67 homes, you know, some home ownership, some rental that are dedicated in that way to remaining affordable. So you've got 4% of your housing stock affordable to, you know, 40% of your households that could need it. We have seen that almost 200 households are severely cost burdened, which means they are paying more than 50% of their income on housing costs. As we talked about at the last forum, that just makes it very difficult, as you can imagine, if you're paying fully half of your income on housing costs, to do all of the other things that you need to do with your household's income, including healthcare, transportation, childcare, all of those other things. So that does have a dragging effect on the economy as a whole when we have a lot of housing cost burdened households. In addition, when we look at the waiting lists for the existing dedicated affordable housing, there are over 100 households waiting in line to try to get into those units. So at Templeton Farms, which is senior housing, they always have a very, very long waiting list. Currently, they have 79 seniors waiting And the wait can be up to 5 years or more. And at Stewart Farm in South Common, there's about 28 households waiting on that waiting list. So those are some of the data points that we have looked at in terms of showing that the need for that type of housing. Is this you, Justin?
Yes, it's me. I just like to know on that previous slide, most of that data is actually from 2019, before the pandemic. So that situation has likely gotten quite a bit worse than what is shown here.
Right.
So this slide, how many dedicated affordable homes would we want to see created over the next 5 years? This plan has a proposed goal of creating 20 homes over 5 years, be a mix of home ownership and rental housing. If Kent was able to add 20 homes over the next 5 years, it would get the town to 5% of its housing stock that is dedicated to remaining affordable to these households. 5% of the town's homes would then be dedicated to remaining affordable for the 40% of households in Kent that earn below 80% of AMI. So we have a polling question to accompany this slide.
I'm hoping that everyone's pretty familiar with Zoom polling, but we're gonna try this first polling question. And you guys can raise your hands or type into chat if you have an issue. So you should see a polling question pop up on your screen right now. And the question is, do you support a goal of 20 homes being created over the next 5 years? Your options are yes, no, you think it should be higher than 20, or no, you think it should be lower than 20, or you do not think we need any more dedicated affordable homes in Kent. And again, if you're having any challenges, if it's not popping up on your screen, let me know. I can tell you that 20 of 29 of you have voted so far. And as soon as I get a fair number of you, I can end the poll and I can show you guys the results. All right, anybody need any more time here? I'm gonna end the poll. And so you can see what the results are here. So it looks like the greatest number of people think it should be higher. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. All right, Justin.
Yes. So we have 5 housing plan goals. One is to expand and preserve dedicated affordable housing in Kent, like what we've been discussing. 2 is supporting affordable home buyer options. 3 is supporting the creation of accessory apartments. 4 is to increase the diversity of Kent's housing stock. And 5 is to help meet the housing needs of those who work and volunteer in Kent. Proposed goal 1, expand and preserve dedicated affordable housing in Kent. The draft strategy for feedback are: 1, consider utilizing appropriate town-owned properties for this purpose. Properties could be donated, leased, or sold to nonprofit housing organizations such as Kent Affordable Housing. 2, explore the feasibility of additional units at Templeton Farm in South Common, where the waiting lists are often years long. 3, conduct outreach to Kent landowners to let them know about the option of donating or selling land or old houses to Kent Affordable Housing. And we have some polling questions to accompany this as well.
Yes, and I will say, I do see there's a question in the chat. And I think what I'll do, if it's okay, is just take those questions at the end. if it's related to a specific goal or strategy, we could address it.
Jocelyn, I just wanted to make you aware that not everyone can see the chat, that you are the only person that can see the chat.
Right. Yes. Okay, so let me launch these polling questions. All right, you should have 2 questions popping up on your screen. One, if you support the strategy of utilizing appropriate town-owned properties. And the second one is about whether you support the strategy of exploring the feasibility of adding more units at Templeton Farm and South Common. All right, and the 5-second warning. All right. And share the results. And I'm just trying to jot them down real quick. So.
Jocelyn, I was grabbing some screenshots. If you can scroll down so I can see the rest of it, I can get those and get them sent over to you after.
Okay, I scrolled, or do you?
Yeah, I need 1 second.
Okay.
Doing this the old fashioned way and just copying and pasting it out into a Word document. Let me grab the other one.
And I think last time you did we can do a report after, I think, but I'm always nervous.
Same, and I am very trusting of Zoom, but yeah, give me like 5 more seconds. Okay, got it.
All right. So this next slide, Connie, I think we volunteered you for this one.
That's right. Yeah. So, so this is a pretty wordy slide. And let's see if we can walk through it together. So these are some of the strategies that that we think would be helpful towards proposed goal 2, which is to support affordable home buyer options. And the first one is really to make people aware that there are programs that provide down payment assistance for first-time home buyers, as well as programs that provide education to help people walk through the first-time home buyer process. And in these words is also the idea that awareness that we might be able to do that by publishing an annual article in the town newsletter and conducting other outreach. So this CHFA, HDF, and FHLB are programs that offer this kind of assistance. Excuse me. And then the second strategy again, looks to existing programs and helping make people aware that there is, assistance with obtaining mortgages for income eligible home buyers. And so, again, that would be a matter of publicizing this and linking people up with that kind of assistance. The third strategy is about outreaching to Kent landowners to let them know that they could donate or even sometimes sell land or houses to Kent Affordable Housing for their parcel program. More on that in the next slide. And that in addition to Kent Affordable Housing, there are entities like Habitat for Humanity that are set up to receive land and properties with houses that would be, that would be affordable homes. The fourth strategy on this slide is to look at partnership options between land trusts and Kent Affordable Housing. Many of you probably associate me with the Kent Land Trust, and obviously I believe very strongly in protecting conservation values. However, not all properties are properties with high conservation value, and conceivably there are properties that could be developed and protected in terms of their conservation value as well. So, doing the kind of awareness raising so that people are aware that there are entities that are not land trusts, but instead would accept donated properties for the purpose of affordable housing would be another strategy that goes to this goal too. And then finally, the establishment of a town revolving loan fund that could provide down payment assistance. So I think that's it on this dense slide, and let's take a look at the polling questions.
Thanks, Connie. Maybe we could just talk real quick about what the parcel program is, and then go to because I stuck the two polling questions together.
Okay. All right. So while I am hardly the expert on the parcel program, you can see here on this slide that the idea behind it is that lots are leased for a long term to households earning up to 100% of the area median income, which reduces the cost of the home. So, this is, in this sense, one of those ways of protecting the affordability of homes, and families, depending on whether a parcel, is developed or undeveloped, would either build their own homes or renovate existing homes. I don't know, Jocelyn, if you'd like to say anything more about the parcel program before diving into those polls.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to mention again, these are Cornwall has a pretty active parcel program. I think in Kent you have, Justin, or Virginia, you could jump in there. You've got one parcel program home. I think Cornwall has 16 so far. But again, the idea is that the parcel is made available affordably to the household, and then they build their own home or sometimes renovate a home that's there. So that is a program that is out there. So going back to my slide with too many words on it, I will launch the polling question, and let's see here. All right. So there should be two polling questions on your screen. One is just asking whether you are aware of the parcel program that Kent Affordable Housing has. And the second was whether you support the strategy of establishing a revolving loan fund, specifically for down payment assistance. All right, I think I've got most folks here responded. Oh, there's one more. I'm going to end the poll.
Got it.
Okay. And I do want to back up for a second because there was a specific question about, and I apologize, I didn't see it, about this last slide. And let me just, so Matt Winter was asking what town-owned property could be considered for affordable housing, and asked whether Templeton Farms and South Commons are town-owned. I can answer the second part of your question quickly. So South Common is owned by Kent Affordable Housing, and Templeton Farms is owned by that entity, that not the town. But Justin, do you want me to show that map that you created? Justin created a map. Let me just, I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to share this map. Justin, do you want to talk about the map?
So this is land that's owned by Kent Affordable Housing and the town of Kent, totaling approximately 8 acres. The town of Kent owns approximately 6 acres. This is land that's largely undeveloped and not actively utilized here. And so these are the shaded areas. Of course, some of this would not be suitable for development, but surely some of it would be suitable for developing affordable housing. So it may be worthwhile.
Yeah,
And just to
to orient people. This is South Common here.
Yep.
Yeah, and in case they can't see this, this is the transfer station. Any other points of interest I should point out?
Tennis courts.
Well,
Tennis.
the tennis courts, the big blue, indeed.
Okay. Sorry. Did I interrupt you, Justin?
Nope.
All right. So hopefully that answers the question. I'm going to go back to the slides here. All right. So did David, was David able to join us? Did you guys, have you seen him? Because I think he was going to cover these slides. I don't see him. All right. All right. So I will cover these slides unless anybody else wants to jump in there. Bueller, no, okay. The third goal that the committee has talked about is supporting the creation of accessory apartments. So as you might know, you can create an apartment that is smaller than your primary dwelling, either in your home or in a barn or garage or a separate building. Currently, you can create one of those on your property. And some of the strategies we've talked about in terms of supporting the creation of more of those, which can, again, create some additional rental housing opportunities in town. Again, they aren't necessarily dedicated affordable rental opportunities, but they are typically, because they have to be smaller than the primary dwelling, they're usually either studios, 1, sometimes 2 bedrooms, but usually studios and 1 bedrooms. And they're typically more kind of affordable by nature. The strategies we've talked about include just, again, increasing awareness for residents that they have this opportunity. And then there were a bunch of strategies around trying to potentially assist homeowners who might want to create an apartment, including possibly providing some technical assistance around how you get it done, publishing a brochure with the various steps you have to go through and making that available on the website, and possibly even establishing a subsidy fund that could help with building an accessory apartment. We also talked about the fact that accessory apartments can also be, and sometimes are, used as short-term rentals. So they're rented on Airbnb. And obviously this creates another option, but it's not, if it's rented short-term, it's not creating those kind of year-round options that we are seeing are needed. So just looking for ways to encourage residents to potentially rent longer term if they can, rather than short term, and helping with doing creditor background checks, or sort of, again, other kind of technical assistance. The other strategy that the committee has talked about is, and for example, the town of Roxbury has done this. They have amended their zoning regulations to actually allow up to 2 accessory apartments per property. So in the town of Roxbury, for example, you can have 1 apartment in your home, for example, in a upper floor or in a walkout basement, for example. And you can also have one in a detached building. So you could have one above your garage as well. And so one of the strategies we've discussed is potentially amending the regulations to allow 1 attached and 1 detached. So we're going to ask you some polling questions about that. So you should get 3 questions popping up on your screen. The first one is about that zoning regulation amendment, whether you would support that idea of allowing up to 2 accessory apartments per property. The second question is around establishing some kind of fund that would assist homeowners with creating an apartment. And the last question is about whether you would support the strategy of providing some technical assistance around going through the steps of creating an accessory apartment. All right, I think got everyone. I'm going to end the poll. Jean, do you need me to scroll?
Yep, and I need about 8 more seconds just to get make sure I put it in the right place. Almost there. So we had, hang on, I think I'm in the wrong window. Alrighty. One more, just a couple more seconds. Sorry about that. Okay, got it.
All right. Let's see here. All right. Sorry. My polling question won't go away.
I don't know if it makes any difference, but I can't see it.
Yeah, it would just, sorry, it was just going, it was over the top of the screen, so I couldn't see it. Okay, I think this was David's slide too, so I will cover this one. The next goal is around increasing increasing the diversity of Kent's housing stock. So as you might recall, if you came to the last forum, almost 80% of Kent's housing stock is all one type of housing. Again, this is pretty common in many smaller Litchfield County towns, but single family detached homes is the majority of your housing stock, and that's sort of the most expensive type of home to construct, own, and maintain. And then also only 15% of Kent's households have children, but 60% of your housing stock has 3 or more bedrooms. So again, this is something we see commonly in the smaller towns in Litchfield County, that we've got a lot of housing stock that's really designed for families with children, but we don't have a lot of families with children to put in them. So it's kind of a mismatch between our demographics and the housing stock that we have. So some of the strategies that we have talked about, the first one is publishing a fact sheet on what housing options can be created under the existing zoning regulations. There are quite a few of them, and we will be detailing some of those as well in the housing plan itself. But things like dividing properties, accessory apartments, which we just talked about. There are mixed use and village housing options that are, allowed currently in the zoning regulations. So just making sure that people are aware of what is already allowed under the existing zoning regulations. And then encouraging development in the town's village housing overlay zone and the village mixed use overlay zone. Again, those are already in the zoning regulations, really focused on the village center area, and consider investing American Rescue Plan Act funding, which you might be familiar with, that the town is getting from the federal government, or CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant, also known as Small Cities funding that comes through the state from the federal government, to invest in the infrastructure that might be needed to accommodate some more housing options in that area, including potentially putting in a town road and or expanding the sewer system capacity, again, to just accommodate additional housing options in the village center, where residents could walk to a lot of things. The other kind of group of strategies that have been discussed at the steering committee level is considering zoning changes. And again, this would go to planning and zoning for their consideration, but changes that would promote more multifamily housing units, including potentially eliminating the minimum lot size, which is currently 1 acre for multifamily, reducing the lot area required, eliminating the 8 unit per building cap, increasing the lot coverage, reducing the parking minimums. Currently 2.5 parking spaces are required per housing unit, no matter how many bedrooms I think the housing unit is. And then reaching out to developers to discuss the feasibility of building, again, a different type of housing than single family detached homes, which is what you've got now, to just determine what zoning changes might be needed in order to encourage the creation of some more of those, other than the zoning strategies that the Planning and Zoning Commission has already put in place. So let's see. I am going to launch the polling questions around this. There's 2 questions that should come up on your screen. One is if you support utilizing some of that federal funding that's coming to the town to invest in the infrastructure to accommodate some more housing in the town center area. And the other question is whether you would support zoning changes to promote, again, a diversity of housing stock. And I see David's joined us just in time to get out of speaking.
Sorry.
Yeah, we know you were waiting.
You can do the next
Yeah.
2 if you'd like.
So the polling questions did not pop up for me.
Oh, they didn't? Does everybody else see the polling questions?
I did get them and answered them.
I did also.
Sorry, Justin. We don't want your answer anyway. All right, I'm going to stop the polling in a minute here. If anyone else wants to answer, do so now.
So are you writing a script for the different slides? I think the slide before you said was mine. It's right when I popped on. Or are we just talking through them now?
Yeah, I talked through the 2 slides that we had assigned to you.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end this poll and share the results. All right, Jean, you got that? If you're talking, Jean, I can't hear you because you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just need to scroll down and grab the other answer. Hold on one sec. Got it.
All right. So, Jean, I think you were going to cover this one.
Yes. So proposed goal 5 is to help meet the housing needs of those who work and volunteer in Kent. And some of the the 3 draft strategies are to meet with the town's larger employers once a year to find out what their employee housing needs are and discuss ways they could partner with the town and or Kent Affordable Housing to meet those needs. Meet with the Kent Volunteer Fire Department annually to find out what their volunteers housing needs are and discuss strategies and ways to meet that. And develop and update annually a list of contact information for existing landlords and housing developments in Kent to provide to employers and volunteer organizations and to share that out via the town e-newsletter, website, et cetera, to let people know about housing opportunities as they arise. And the supporting the plan implementation. So how do we ensure the strategies in this housing plan will be implemented? This is sort of the crux. So schedule twice yearly meetings of an implementation committee with representatives from the various boards and commissions listed as responsible for implementation to report on progress. Appoint and or hire a town housing coordinator, so that would be volunteer or paid, to chair the meetings and assure progress. And a note that such an employee has been recommended in the POCD since 1989. Make the housing plan part of the updated plan of conservation and development, considering establishing a town affordable housing fund similar to Salisbury, Washington, and some other towns to support the achievement of the goals and strategies in this plan. and also to research what other towns have done and get some success stories that we might be able to model after. And continually carrying out activities, events, media sharing, et cetera, to increase awareness about the housing needs in Kent and how residents can help address these needs.
All right, and we've got a couple polling questions about these strategies. They should pop up on your screen unless you're Justin.
I got him this time.
Ah, darn it. Okay, so the questions are around appointing or hiring a housing coordinator and whether you would support the creation of a housing fund. All right, I think I've got everybody. I'm gonna end the poll. Here are the results. All right, thank you everybody for, those were our last polling questions. You got them, Jean? Okay.
Yeah.
So we do want to answer any more questions that folks have, get any more feedback that people have. I just want to mention kind of what the next steps are in the planning process here. You know, as we mentioned, the last community input forum is when we talked about the needs assessment and the survey. So that has been done. And then we had that informational meeting and feedback forum February 23rd. We then drafted these goals and strategies that we talked with you about tonight to address those housing needs. And here we are in June, again, presenting that to you and, you know, trying to get some sense of whether residents support those goals and strategies. The housing plan will be drafted over the coming month or so to include, again, all of that, everything that we have talked about in the last two forums together into one document. It should be available, I'm hoping, in July for feedback, but certainly by August. It will be posted on the town's website for at least 35 days before a public hearing for adoption. So there will be, you know, additional opportunities to provide feedback and also to see the final plan put together. So with that, we do want to make sure that we answer any questions that you have. I know there's at least one or two in the chat. I'm going to stop screen sharing. So you can, I'm going to answer a couple questions in the chat or, and then, yes, please raise your hand or, you know, type additional questions in the chat box. So there was an initial question from Dow early on about saying, I am not sure of the impact on Kent to create affordable housing. What I think the question is, what would the impact on Kent be if affordable housing was created? Any of the committee members want to take that?
Yes, I just wanted to say I'm
yeah.
Dow. Julie.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so my concern is, creating affordable housing, the impact it would have in terms of increased population, traffic, pollution, noise, I mean, different things like that. Because I noticed that on the weekends especially, there is a lot of traffic and noise already. So I'm just speaking from that perspective as well as a conservationist perspective. But it seems like you also tonight presented other options that would possibly not impact that. So, as the evening wore on, I was feeling more encouraged that a lot of thought went into that as well. So, but if you want to comment, that'd be great, or somebody comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Dow. It looks like maybe Virginia, you want to comment? Wait, you're muted.
I'd be happy to tell my favorite story about Templeton Farm. When that was proposed in the 70s, a lot of people said that it would be a detriment to the town because a lot of people would come in from other places. Fortunately, it was approved eventually. And in a generation, it turned out that the people who objected to Templeton Farm being built found out that their mothers were living there. Now another, not people from someplace else, their mothers who grew up, who watched them grow up in Kent. Then another generation went by, and now the people who are at Templeton Farm are the people who objected. They're now living there themselves happily and grateful to have the affordable possibility of Templeton Farm. Most of them do not drive. Most of them do not have high carbon footprints. And the same is true of Stewart Farm Apartments, which has made very little impact on the traffic in town, which primarily comes from weekenders and tourists. And the same can be true of the inhabitants of affordable housing, because all of those apartments are very low in carbon impact, much less than the places with 3-car garages, infinity pools, and 4,000 square feet homes that need to be heated. So I do not think it is going to turn the nature of Kent for the worse. Furthermore, we're talking about 20 units of affordable housing in the next 5 years. It took Kent Affordable Housing 13 years to add 10 years to add 13 units at Stewart Farm. That has hardly made a dent in Kent, except to clean up some desperately derelict properties. So I don't think that that is going to be a problem in any way.
Thanks, Virginia. Jean, did you want to
Yeah,
comment on that?
just to briefly dovetail on what Virginia was saying. Dow, first of all, thanks for your question and comment. I think it's, a really valid concern. And going through this process with this committee has really illustrated the balance that we're trying to strike to make sure that the growth is good growth for, not only for, obviously the primary focus is to create more housing opportunities for people in Kent, but it's also with that balance of, our rural community, the mobility that people we're seeing starting to seek where they don't want to have a vehicle. They are able to work remotely all the time and they don't need to have a vehicle. Maybe they lived the past 10 years in Manhattan and never had a vehicle. So sort of reaching out beyond the sort of stereotypical version of affordable housing and really making it striking a good balance, I think is what we're doing really well in this plan.
Thanks, Jean. Okay, so Andrea has had her hand up. Can you go ahead?
Hi, thank you for doing this presentation and letting us be part of the forum. I had a couple questions about, like, for the accessory dwelling units, when we look at the zoning possibly changing, does that then make your home a multifamily home, and then it would be required to be under those zoning things, or how would that work out? And maybe that's just a question for the zoning commission much later, but that was something that jumped in my brain.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll answer it, and David or anyone else could jump in too. But accessory apartments are a little different, again, because they have to be smaller than the primary dwelling. So usually, I can't remember specifically what your regulations say, but usually they can't be any more than 30%, for example, of the square footage of your primary home. So those usually are treated differently than multifamilies. Typically, they also have to be, one of the units has to be owner occupied. And that is not true in a multifamily, a 2-family or a 3-family. Oh, Justin says that Kent got rid of the square footage limitations. Okay. So they are treated differently in the zoning regulations, accessory apartments versus multifamily. And the details are all in there.
Okay, thank you. And then another question that popped in, I should have written these down. Oh, I guess a comment. When we're looking at, like, the strategies and goals that you all have laid out, clearly a lot of thought has gone into it. But when I look at things like, educating town residents about, the first-time home buyer assistance and those kind of things, as someone who is a first-time home buyer and just bought a house in Kent on Main Street, walkable in, so that we can live our 1-car life. I joke that our other car is a stroller. We do this thing downtown, and we walk everywhere except for when we have to go to work. And that's like a key for how we live. But on the other hand, we sort of had to scramble and felt like with the housing market, we couldn't, like, get in line for all these assistance programs and those kind of things. So, like, educating people that they exist is only, like, part of the battle. Like, when you're in this seller's market, where anything could have been bought out from under us in, 30 seconds kind of thing. So I think that's, it's fine. It's admirable to make sure people know about these things. But then on the flip side of that is these goals that you're writing, I don't know how they're not in what's called SMART goals. Like, they're not specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So I see a lot of, like, specific part, but not necessarily measurable. Like, how many more families in Kent, how will you know that your efforts to educate people about home buying programs are successful if are you going to say, 3 more families are going to be utilizing these things, 10 more families are going to be utilizing these things? So having it be measurable and then time bound, like, within what time frame do you want to implement these goals of having, assistance for people that want to have accessory dwellings, those kind of things. So that was just something that struck me, that the goals are less specific than I think they need to be. And, how do we know we're successful? You guys are obviously putting a lot of work into this. And so we want to know how's your work paying off? Thank you.
Thanks,
Excellent
Andrea.
point.
Sorry, Justin, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just saying that those are excellent points. Having actual goals in here, I think is going to be very important. And as far as your experience in trying to buy a house in Kent, that's something that we recognize is a huge issue. And so, increasing the options available for first-time home buyers is if people who want to run it is a key part of what we're trying to do here.
Thanks. And I did want to note, Matt Winter had asked one more question about whether the housing plan will recommend more accessory dwellings in the rural zone or limit this recommendation to the village center. I don't know that we've talked about that specifically in the housing plan steering committee. Have we? Steering committee?
Not that I recall, but it is a good question and distinction.
Yeah, it is a good question. I mean, obviously, as Matt knows, ultimately any recommendation like that would go to planning and zoning anyway for their further consideration. But yeah, we haven't talked about that specifically in the steering committee. Did you want to add anything to that, Matt?
Yeah, I'll just say that the aspect of the question is really comes from the soil-based zoning in the rural zone and the lot size zoning in the village center residential districts.
Mm-hmm.
So that just if this committee begins to think about that, that's and I'm sure you all will. That's a consideration to.
Matt, this is David. I think we did kick around the idea that because most of the physical properties in the rural zone, that the housing plan would benefit if we found ways to encourage additional accessory units there. But the idea was that the planning and zoning would think that through about how or if it would make sense. But it's like, you have more options just because there's more space there. So we wanted to at least put it on the table as something to consider.
Okay, yeah, that all makes sense. There's definitely a lot of options in the rural zone. That idea gets away a little bit from the idea in the 2013 POCD and sort of our thinking as we rewrite the plan of conservation development now, that we're trying to encourage residential growth within the village district near the services and create the vibrant village center. And have the rural zone outside of the designated village center residential districts to sort of maintain the rural character of Kent. So just different ideas and different considerations.
Thanks, Matt.
Sure.
Did you have any other questions while you're unmuted?
No, I won't bore you. Thanks though, Jocelyn.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Let's see.
Jocelyn, just a quick sort of rhetorical question, maybe for our next meeting, but 16 parcels in the parcel program in Cornwall sounds like a very big success story, and I'm just very interested to hear how, what their model is, and not for an answer tonight, but they must be doing something right.
Well, I'll just say very briefly, most of those homes were built quite a long time ago, and they are having trouble now. This is the Cornwall Housing Corporation, which is the similar organization to Kent Affordable Housing in Cornwall. They are having a lot of trouble. They actually have 4 vacant parcels that they want to build homes on, but they haven't been able to find income eligible households who also want to build their own home. It's a pretty big lift. And also you have to be able to qualify for a mortgage, but also qualify for a construction loan. So, it can be a good program, but again, I think a lot of the success story in Cornwall was from many years ago prior to the construction costs that we're seeing now, and the challenge with qualifying for mortgages for first-time home buyers. So,
Thanks.
but I'm happy to talk with the committee a little bit more about that. But certainly, again, anything that we can do to create those first-time home buyer options would be terrific. Virginia, did you want to respond about that? You're muted, so we can't hear you.
Sorry. Not about that particularly, but I'd like to add a couple of notes. In talking with the land use person today, I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that they are now referring this to a Kent affordability housing plan, which I think is a great improvement because, as one of the slides says, it is not only about restricted affordable places, but also about any others which are not necessarily state sanctioned, but might be created by homeowners in their own homes, accessories, without going to deed restriction, which is probably very difficult on private property. The other thing I'd like to point out is that there was some years ago a brochure about creating accessory apartments published by the Council of Governments and Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation. That could be updated and resumed being put out. There is a similar brochure in the pockets outside the land use office right now on what is necessary in terms of zoning and construction to build an accessory shed. And it would not take much to put those two together and have that brochure, which is one of the points in this plan. Another point about Cornwall is I understand, and this is strictly informal chit chat, that they are now considering that the fact that they have a number of properties which are not terribly useful for building housing. And they're considering the fact that the town has a number of properties which are suitable for building housing. And they're considering making swaps on those so that the town has more open space and the affordable housing can build more affordable housing. The critical thing about building affordable housing, not accessory apartments, but building single or multiple affordable or units is the land. There is practically no town-owned land left in Kent that is not built upon or conserved. So that's an important thing. We were able to build Stewart Farm Apartments, 13 units, because we had an option on 2 acres. And we were very fortunate to be able to find another acre next door through a federal agency that helps nonprofits buy properties in foreclosure, which that one was as well. So that's important. Other than that, there is talk in this plan of a fund within the town to help first-time buyers, to help discourage Airbnb in relation to long-term rentals. I would be very interested to know how such a fund could be set up, because the town does not seem to have a lot of extra money left over in its budgeting process. If that is a possibility to be a nonprofit in some way, then private donations could go to that fund, and that could build up into something that really could be useful for advancing affordable housing. And I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Virginia. I just want to note, I know I see the time. I appreciate everyone being here and hanging in there with us. There is just one question from Donna about whether there's any talk of reducing the 10% requirement based on the different regions in Connecticut. So I think when Donna's talking about that, she's talking about the Affordable Housing Appeals Act, which does note that if a town does not have 10% of its housing stock as dedicated affordable, that a developer can come in and build and kind of build regardless of your zoning regulations, so long as they can meet health and safety requirements. As long as some portion of those units are affordable. As you might have noted from the slide about the number of homes, trying to create 20 homes over the next 5 years, that would just get you to 5% of your housing stock as dedicated affordable. I will say, in answer to your question, Donna, which we could talk about for a long time, just briefly, I mean, there's been talk about reducing that requirement, I'm sure, ever since that legislation was passed 30 years ago, but it hasn't really gone anywhere in terms of the, actually getting something passed through the legislature. Personally, I don't think of it as a requirement, nor do I think about it as, Again, I think what's really important and what we're doing here with the town is really thinking about what are your housing needs, because 10% is just an arbitrary number that the state picked out. So really it's important that the town think about what its housing needs are, specifically for dedicated affordable housing, as well as, again, other housing options, as the steering committee has been doing, and think about ways of meeting that. Between, I think one of the tools that towns have used in the past are, friendly 830Gs to get things done, using the Affordable Housing Appeals Act by local housing nonprofits to get projects done. That has occurred in many Litchfield County towns. So yes, there's always talk of reducing that requirement. But I think the more important conversation, and the one that we've been trying to have in Kent and all the other towns as well, is really trying to quantify what is your need and what is also the realistic goal that you can get to over the next 5 years, and just working on that, kind of not worrying about the 10% threshold that's there. Justin, I know you like to talk about 830G. You look like you want to.
Love talking about 830G. So yeah, 10% is a long ways off, and we're not going to get to it anytime soon to get an exemption from 830G in Kent. But Kent already has enough housing unit equivalent points for a 4-year moratorium on 830G, thanks to the housing that Kent Affordable Housing has built and the deep affordability of so much of it. And the housing that we would build, going along with this plan that's dedicated to affordable, would add to the housing unit equivalent points. So, perhaps at some point in the future, Kent could qualify for another moratorium on 830G if it wanted to. So we are moving towards 10%. It's still a long ways off, but we've already made quite a bit of progress in that department.
Thanks.
Thanks, Donna. All right, in the interest of time, if it's okay, we're gonna, I think, call it a night. But I just want to say, if anyone else has any other comments, questions, ideas, please feel free to reach out to anybody on the committee. Jean, Justin, Virginia, Connie, David, Alice, any of the committee members would be happy to get any comments, questions, feedback that you have. And I think we just want to, again, thank everybody for coming tonight and giving us your feedback. And anything else, committee? Oh,
Thank
Jean,
you, Jocelyn, for all your hard work on this and getting us all together and making this happen.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for coming on. I know it's, you know, it's a long evening, and thanks to the committee and thanks to Jocelyn for everybody's hard work on this, and a long process to get us to where we are tonight.
All right,
And
thank
we
you.
have to officially adjourn. So
Okay.
according to Apple, it is 8:23, and we'll adjourn at that time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.